Evening program that we have every Thursday, meditation at 6:30, and a wonderful program, conversation, presentation at 7 o'clock. And so I'd like to introduce our host for the evening, our MC, Sister Louise. And Louise, welcome. And would you introduce the program and the guest and what we expect tonight, please?
Thank you, Brother Eric. Om Shanti, and welcome to everyone for joining us this evening on our Thursday night insight sessions. And we're so happy to be able to bring you not necessarily local Brahmins, speakers, but people from all over the world, thanks to the miracle of Zoom. But tonight I'm very happy to share with you a very good friend of mine who is a sister, very dear to my heart, and she's right here with us. She heads the center in Queens now, and her name is Sister Gayatri. But before I introduce her, there she is. Welcome. I do want to say that some of you might have been expecting Sister Kala, but unfortunately she won't be with us tonight. And Sister Gayatri was kind enough to pinch hit for her. So thank you so much. So I just want to reiterate that the theme for tonight is living peacefully and happily with yourself. And most of us who come here are looking for peace and happiness. And as I always say, we hope that you'll leave here this evening with whatever it is you've come for. And we hope we never disappoint. We are very proud of the speakers we have for you every week. I'm very happy to be part of whatever community you can call the Zoom community now. It used to be local New York, and now we're blessed with many different people and venues. So the topic for this evening is free yourself from thinking of and looking at others. Free yourself from thinking of and looking at others. And of course, that does not mean that we don't think of others. So we're going to find out tonight exactly what that means. What is it when we're constantly focused or too much of the time wasting thoughts about what other people are thinking about us, how we should be behaving in their eyes? And hopefully by the time you leave tonight, Sister Gayatri will help us bring the focus back to ourselves and have good advice for us in how we can be happier, because it's an inside job. So I just want to tell you a little bit about Sister Gayatri. She has been a student and a teacher of Raj Yoga and part of the Brahma Kumari's world since she was a very young child. And she's practiced Raja Yoga meditation for the past 45 years and is so dedicated, I know this personally, to integrating spiritual principles and practices into very, very real contemporary life situations. She's a spiritual educator, a writer, a speaker, and in each of these realms, she's dedicated to exploring the spiritual phenomenon of transformation at both the individual and world, global, collective levels. Gayatri is also part of the design team for the Call of the Time Dialogues, which is a global leadership dialogue. And she has spent the last 25 years exploring experiments in silence, which is the transformational depth of contemplative silence and the impact this has on the actions we take for world benefit. And I know that she is very active with as part of our UN delegation, which I don't see in your bio. Is it okay to say that, Sister Gayatri? And that we have all been very fortunate. Without even knowing her personally, I can testify to the fact that we all are very grateful to have her working so hard on behalf of humankind and wearing the robes, the garments of a Brahmin. And you know what we're all about. If you're here for the first time this evening, welcome. I would ordinarily say we'd meet you after the session if you want to sign up to receive emails. But if you need anything or you want to talk to anyone, feel free to call Global Harmony House in Great Neck. And I think the number will be posted in the chat. So, Sister Gayatri, this is a tall order this evening. And I'm thinking about people who come to see us being so possibly put off by world circumstances and people not behaving at their best because of all the anxiety that's going on in the world. And somehow that person enters your life whom you've known before, and they're going to behave in a way that you may resent or have an aversion to. So when that happens and we're prejudging, we're making judgments of other people, we're being critical of other people, we're not in a happy place. So I guess maybe a good place to start would be to think about, let me ask you, how can I possibly correct my thinking about someone else whom I know has left a trail all their lives of a triage needed, needs help, or is just going to stir the pot? How do I possibly maintain my own balance in a situation like that?
Well, before I attempt to answer that question, I'm not sure I'm understanding it, but I will try, and then you will guide me to in the direction of the question. I'd like to say that I'm lucky to be on here this evening because at about 5:30 this evening, the entire internet shut down. So Spectrum is telling us we're not going to get back online until 8 o'clock. So I'm using a hotspot for my iPhone, and hopefully I have enough data to keep it going, and the bandwidth will hold. But if I drop off, I'll try to get back on, but know that this is what's going on from my end. And I do apologize if there are any technical glitches, but I hope that we'll be able to, seeing it's just an hour, we'll be able to complete it without any of the glitches. So you're asking me how to deal with a situation in relationship to someone else so that I do not think about him or her if it's bringing me discomfort or it's bringing me any form of being uncomfortable with them around. And I'm assuming you also are saying that it's not someone you can walk away from.
Yeah, or it could
But
be
the
casual,
tendency would
or
be to walk away from someone that I am not comfortable with, or I am, you know, in disagreement with, or, and if I can put a distance between me and the person, I suppose that's the easiest answer. But if I cannot, is that what you say?
yeah, because we all know people who can be difficult because they're coming from whatever they're coming from. And even in casual relationships, I guess the question I'm asking is, how do I take my feelings, my energy, and stay wishing them well and being peaceful within myself if someone is being provocative or someone is trying to manipulate or whatever it may be? What do I do in order to maintain my own inner peace?
Well, before I think we go to what do I do to maintain my inner peace in a situation of relating to another human being, I need to know how much does my inner peace mean to me? How important is my inner peace to me? And I feel that if I'm clear that inner peace is more important to me than what is happening outside of me, or what's happening inside of someone else, that is not me, then I will pay attention to maintaining a certain inner stability connected to that which I value most. And if I value a peace of mind, if I value uh, strong feelings of love, if I value deep meaning and understanding of others, then for me, it is very, that's the starting point. So it becomes a very solid bedrock for me to connect to inside of me, because it's something I want. It is something I value. It is something that is the basis of who I am. It's almost telling me that this is what defines me. This peace within me defines me. So once I'm clear about that, then that becomes an inner field, as it were, an inner ground in which to germinate my thoughts, in which to allow, one is to plant the seeds of thoughts in, but it's also a place from where seeds of thoughts will emerge. So it's both, it's like, how do I think what's going on with the other? So that will stimulate thoughts from outside of me. I'm thinking of someone else, so those thoughts are the stimulus of the thoughts will be someone outside of me. But also there's something, this bedrock within me that I value most, that I want to connect to, that I feel is true to who I am, whether that's peace, whatever word you want to give it, then that will emerge seeds of thoughts for me as well. So when we thinking about thinking, when I'm having thoughts about thinking, then I'm seeing that thoughts actually are something I create based on a stimulus. It could be a stimulus that comes from the subconscious, which I'm calling the bedrock of something that's authentic to me. Or the stimulus could be something that is not authentic to me, is something that is coming to disturb my inner peace. And that could be a stimulus also for thoughts. So the moment I know that there are two stimuli for thoughts, then I can choose. This is the choice point. So now I will choose, where do I want my thoughts to be connected? And I choose then to make that the field from which the thoughts will emerge and grow. And so I think that's the first basic thing. If you're saying, let's start with ourselves, and I'm also saying, let's start with ourselves, because ultimately, no one else can choose for me what kind of thoughts I should have. Neither could I say, you made me feel like this. I cannot blame you for the way I'm feeling. You may be the stimulus, but I still had a level of choice and control over what I choose, how I choose to respond. And I think we've lost sight of that. And because we've lost sight of this innate power of understanding thought and thinking, stimulus and basis of the stimulus, we have handed over our spiritual kind of sense or wisdom to ignorance. We kind of got it lost in the shadows of ignorance, and we've forgotten that how to use it, and we've forgotten that it is something that forms the basis of the way of who we are and the way we want to respond to others. So I'm sure you want to go into other levels of this, but I want to set that as a premise of how I see thought and thinking.
Yeah. So the very topic itself implies that we are not free from thinking and looking at others. And it implies a problem, I think, if I'm reading the topic correctly, that people have trouble doing what you're presenting right now, freeing themselves from a disturbance, or as you said, it can be a subconscious stimulus of any kind. But if we are the victims of ourselves, why is it people have so much trouble freeing themselves from
I think
not being in that bedrock you spoke of?
I think it's because we don't know who am I. I see myself through others, and I know myself the way others describe me to me. And that is the path we have traveled. That's the road we have traveled so far, in which we are defined by other people's opinions of us, or we are defined by social norms, or we are defined by cultural norms. And so, which in a way, for a spiritual aspirant, you would say that that is based on the material paradigm, or it's based on the body and extensions of the body. It's based on matter. But once I come onto a spiritual path, I realize that who am I actually transcends all the limitations of how I've been defined up until the point I embark on a journey to discover who I am. And I feel that, it's becoming almost a norm for people to want to know who they are. It's, if you were to talk about authentic self and true self, and exploring and discovering and realizing things that are from the inside out in today's language, and in today's, the people of today, then, it's not even a generation, it's across generations. People wouldn't say you're talking garbage. People wouldn't say, I don't know what you're talking about. Because if you look at publications, not just of self-help, but even in the corporate world, even in the educational world, people are moving more toward finding out who I am through different modalities of discovery. And so all this, how to do it, how to fix it, how to live longer, how to live, have a better diet. It's all about now, finding your authentic self. So I feel that that is what people want, and that is what people know will bring them a different kind of meaning to their lives. And so if that's what people want, and if that's what they are aspiring toward, then I give them, that kind of respect, that they are putting in some work to find out the answer to this question, who am I? Because only they can find it out for themselves. The moment I ask myself that question and I'm comfortable to embark on a path of discovery to find out about myself, I have started a new pattern of thinking about myself. Now, the new pattern of thinking about myself through a process of discovery, if I don't know who I am, I'm discovering who I am, I think empowers us to get closer to ourselves, empowers us to take the risk to explore dimensions of ourselves that we never had the courage to do before. It also reinforces within ourselves that there's a depth that's lying there to be tapped. There is a potential that is unused, and now I must discover it. Now, all of that is actually bringing me closer to who I am and breaking down the barriers that I have inadvertently built because I didn't know what else to do. I didn't know how to be different. I thought I had to be what others told me I had to be in order to be accepted by them. And so I think that this discovery process is a process that brings me closer to myself, allows me to discover a lot of things about myself, good and bad. Not just good, but good and bad. But the bad is only there because the flip side of it is good, and I'm not looking at the flip side of the coin. And so I'm going to look at both. So it is the discovery path, it's a very balanced path. And it is not a path that takes me into la la land, nor is it a path that tells me that it's all goody two-ish when you get in there. But it's a part that it's asking me to honor a responsibility to myself in order to be of greater service to others.
So many people in our audience today live with family, they have children, they're experiencing a pandemic, and everyone is 7 days a week with each other in closer quarters than ever. And I think that a lot of people come here looking for peace because they're having trouble, because if they're coming here and let's say their significant other isn't, or their teenage children aren't, and they are constantly needing that strength to not look at other people for who they are, to, as the topic suggests, that it's very important for them to stop thinking about others all the time and to center oneself in the middle, in the vortex of the volcano, in the middle of the eruptions. And that, I think, is something that is very difficult to do when you're living with other people who don't think the way you do and who have determined your identity in their own minds for maybe decades, or it may not be that casual first acquaintance, you know. So when you talk about going inward and taking care of oneself, how do we prepare to do that on a day-to-day basis with and not look at the worst in other people and hope that they're not looking for the worst in us, and consistently try and maintain good wishes for people who are screaming at you in the kitchen?
I mean, I think that the question of how do I live with others is it a question that is a fair one? Because we do live in a world that is full of others. So I have to, as a human being, that is almost part of the contract of being a human being. And the contract is I have to live with others. From the moment I am born into the world in that baby's body, I'm interdependent. There's an interrelationship there. There's an interdependency there. There is a bonding there. So obviously, for my very survival, I need people around me. I cannot transform. I cannot change. I cannot grow if I take myself and put myself on an island and live there all by myself. So I feel that somehow within the question, I'm thinking, well, do we have a choice? That was my first response to you. Do we have a choice? We don't have a choice. We're always going to have people around us. I'm going to have the ice cream bell out here playing, and it could either irritate me or I could say, that's so good. Spring is here. The ice cream cart is out. The children are playing. The flowers are happy. And so I could turn it around and make it something positive because somebody's taking benefit from it. And it may be disturbing me, but no, it's still there. So I feel that I'll give you an example of what I'm saying. Yesterday, I was doing an interview, and this interview was with a family who actually is huge. And they're going back in their history, and I'm interviewing some of the elders of the family. And it's going back to their great-grandfather, their grandfather and great-grandfather. And this grandfather had 4 children. And all 4 of his children lived in the same area that he lived in. Each child, one child, he had 3 sons and 1 daughter. The 3 sons had 12, 13, and 15 children. And a daughter had 2. All these 12, 14, and 15, 12, 13, and 15 children, they had children of their own. They got married and they had children. So it's a huge family. And as I was talking to this elder a few days ago, I said to him, I said, what was one of the values that that you have learned from your grandfather? And he said, unity. And I said, well, what does that mean? He said, we lived together until, we were quite old before the 3 brothers branched off and got their own property, but they lived in their own little houses within the same compound. And he said that unity for him that he learned from his grandfather was that you may have your differences, but do not let your differences turn into conflicts. And I felt that that was the answer, that if as human beings we have to live together, we must not see differences as causes for conflict. And we must learn to live together, appreciating differences, honoring specialties and uniqueness, and not wanting people to be the way I want them to be. And so maybe we have to look and see what it is inside of us that dislike what someone else is doing. And if it is causing a dislike within me, what is it within me that is disliking it? And maybe I would have to say, is it a condition I'm putting on them? Is it an expectation I have of them? Is it X, Y, or Z? And that's the inner work that we have to do in order that you can't stop thinking about things, but you definitely could choose a different course of thinking about the same things.
Definitely.
Because you can't change, you can't deny that the situation doesn't exist. And it would be foolish to do that. But acknowledging the situation as it is, then what is it I dislike about it? And what it is inside of me that's disliking it. I do have to go that one step deeper. And then, is there a different way of thinking about it? Can I understand it as a difference? And can I not allow that difference to create a conflict? Can I add more meaning and understanding?
So you've introduced a very interesting point of view, changing one's attitude. And changing one's attitude in the moment, I think, requires self-esteem. But to me, it's changing the role from victim of a situation, of whatever's going on, whether it's coming from the mouth of someone I love or mouth of someone I hate, or words or actions or thoughts. It doesn't matter. I have a choice whenever the situation presents itself, whatever the situation is. I have a choice in changing my attitude. I had a minor, silly little example of this myself this afternoon. It's a beautiful day. I'm sitting and I tutor. I'm prepping for the session tonight to tutor before this. And I'm sitting there with my doors open in the kitchen and beautiful fresh air coming in. And I'm doing the preparation. And all of a sudden, one of the workmen in my neighbor's yard, and it's just maybe 70 feet away or less, starts singing at the top of his lungs. And my first reaction was, I can't concentrate. Don't you know this is a small, quiet neighborhood? It's 1 o'clock in the afternoon and and immediately, and I credit my training here, immediately, well, 30 seconds later, I shifted my whole attitude. I took possession and responsibility for my own happiness. And I smiled And I thought about how happy he was. He's doing menial labor. I'm kind of getting glimpses between the trees of this man toting things, and wasn't particularly noisy, but his singing was. His singing was quite loud and joyful. And it set the tone for my whole afternoon. And I was able to tune him out eventually and focus. I could have closed the door and really tuned him out, or I could have chosen to let him be the backdrop for my change of attitude. And that's exactly what happened. And I had no trouble concentrating. I'm realizing now, once I decided to correct my negative attitude, my knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah, but I think it's also deeper than just an attitude, because how would that attitude have emerged to be open enough to allow someone else expression of joy to be, let it be. It's an expression of joy. But you did something that was deeper than an attitude, that actually changed the attitude. You acknowledge the person's right to the joy, the person's right to feeling that joy, and the acceptance of the loudness of the expression of the joy came because you acknowledge a fundamental right of the soul to feel joy. And so once you connected to that, you yourself felt that joy. So you felt the joy for the other, but you were feeling it. So then you wanted it to be a natural expression for him and for you. So then what happened to you was that you were able to then shift your attitude with that. And your attitude became one that was generous. Your attitude became one, okay, let him have the benefit of his joy, and I will make the adjustments. So your attitude then adjusted itself to do certain things. But what I found striking in your story, and I think this is the big lesson here, you didn't reject the joy of the guy because his joy was interfering with your peace. The fact that you didn't do that, you didn't invite him into your mind to keep thinking about all the things that you would have blamed him for because you couldn't concentrate, you couldn't do this. And so because you experienced that whiff of his joy, you became bigger with that joy. And so you kept him out of your mind. So you weren't thinking about him. He wasn't disturbing the peace in your mind because you didn't invite him in. You chose to experience the joy. And the joy protected you from the disturbance. And you did that very naturally. And so I think that by sharing it, we can then look at the points that were so powerful. But we do it sometimes naturally. We do it sometimes so naturally, but it was something profound that you respected in the other. And that was the right to express that joy, the feeling of that joy. And I think if we do more of this, to pause, to contemplate before we react to something, then I think we would choose naturally to go for that which will make us bigger, better, people, to be more generous to others, and not to invite them in and shut them in and quarrel with them and fight with them and blame them, etc.
That's wonderful. He has no idea that he's generated this kind of thinking by whistling and singing.
I'm sure he doesn't, but I'm sure he's getting the vibrations his way.
Knowing you pretty well and knowing about your childhood and your background and everything, it may be that, and I'll include myself in this group, that some people here, for them, it's new to realize, and you mentioned the quality of the soul before, to realize that I have a power within me, to have, and that's why I use the word self-esteem, to realize that I have the self-esteem, not just to call in God, to talk to a higher power, whatever you want to call, the being of your choice, but to realize that my power can be very quiet, and my power can be in my ability to change a thought, my ability to think with what you call the virtues, to feel deserving of peace, to, in the silence of my mind, not run away from it, but to plan a positive thought, to plant a positive thought, to supplant whatever negative thought may be a knee-jerk reaction learned other lifetimes, or when you were a child, or you blame your mother. Forget about it. In the moment, this is a power that I've discovered since I've embarked on a spiritual path that I really never thought about before, and I never knew I had. Could you speak a little bit more to that for our audience who might want to know how to tap into that more readily?
Okay, I would use the word strength first. I have a strength within me. And that strength within me, if I tap into it, would help guide the quality of my thoughts and the quality of my feelings. I think that the strength that we discover inside of ourselves is not something alien to us, because the strength comes from what I call the recognition of my spiritual rights. So the strength comes from the knowledge that as a soul, as a human being, I am entitled to love and to be loved. I'm entitled to peace and to be peaceful. I'm entitled to nonviolence. I don't like violence. I am entitled to joy and happiness. These are all called the strengths that lie within us. And all that the spiritual path is saying, recognize that and use it. Claim your rights and use your rights. These are your spiritual rights. And so I think that in recognizing that as my innate strengths are within me, then I can use my strength to control areas within me that are working against my inner strengths. And by control, you see, this word power for me is control. And that is why, even though power, there's bad power, there's good power, there's hard power, there's soft power, there are many kinds of power. But I like the word strength because strength gives me a sense of being strong. And when I feel strong, when I feel, for instance, emotionally strong, I know I can control emotions that are destructive to me. At least controlling means I can stop myself from falling prey to them. I could stop myself from acting out these emotions because there's a strength within me that's telling me, wait, you could do it differently. You can uphold, which you're calling self-esteem. I'm saying self-respect. I don't have to sweat the small stuff. I can choose my battles. I can, I can feel something different than what you're forcing me to feel. So I could control the force you are sending toward me to make me angry, because you know what? I don't want to be angry in this moment. I want to be something different, but I will need a strength from within me. I want to be peaceful. Anger is not innate to me. Anger is acquired. It's when someone forces me to feel a certain emotion. And I don't want to do it. So then I can choose and say to myself, and you talk about silence and God, that maybe I could just go into silence And I can use my thoughts and feelings to connect to something else with a different kind of force. So I can connect to God, which is considered to be a force of good, which is considered to be a force, or unconditional love, which is considered to be a force of a peace that is all pervasive. It just comes into me and makes me feel different. So I can choose to do that, but without a spiritual training, without a training in how to do that, I wouldn't access my strength. And this is why you're encouraged when you embark on a spiritual path to reclaim that strength, that you need to unlearn the negative aspects of your being, and you need to relearn that which is innate within you. And this is where I think the conversation within the self takes place, in which you then have to ask yourself and have a conversation with yourself. Am I truly by nature violent? Or am I truly by nature non-violent? And for me to answer that question, I have to try to experience both sides of myself and don't condemn myself to being one side without even having given the other side a try. So I feel we have abilities within ourselves that we cannot deny. And no one will deny that they have an ability to have a conversation with themselves. You know, we do it all the time. We do it when we have to make decisions. So why can't we take those things that we do every day, but don't even see, don't even acknowledge, and just enhance it and give it a twist, and then connect it to the other side of myself that God tells me exist within me, the scriptures tell me exist within me, you know, the good side, the divine side, the authentic side. Explore more of that. That gives strength. And then I feel that the more I do that, it's the closer I feel to myself first, and then the closer I feel to there is a higher being. And the more I will be going to that higher being to reinforce that strength that I know is lying within me.
So it becomes a new habit. We're actually reprogramming the neurons, the neurological patterns in our brain to respond. So I heard something that says it pretty succinctly last week. I loved it. It was so simple. Someone said, you have no choice, perhaps, over the first thought, but the second thought is always your choice. You always have the freedom to change that thought. And taking this just one notch further, I guess what I get really excited about is the payoff, what I call the payoff. I may think I'm doing something good. Let's say someone, I had an incident a few weeks ago where a person said something that wasn't appropriate in front of other people. And my first knee-jerk reaction was to defend myself. And then I went right into the mode of correcting that and realizing that this person is struggling. This person is going through a bad, I knew, personal time. And he was just not comfortable in his own self. And so I let it go. And within a day, I got an apology. I hope I didn't offend you. And I said, think nothing of it. Now, the old me, before I was on this course, could not have done that. I probably would have called him first and given him a very detailed explanation as to what he did wrong and why I'm offended and how dare you do that to me. And what I didn't anticipate was the joy I felt at being able to have the inner strength to correct that. And then he knew he didn't need me to tell him what he did wrong. He's an old friend. He knew. And the power of silence, that's only possible for me when I really have a sense of who I am as that higher, more virtual self and not the defensive.
You know, there is an interesting thing in the chat in which someone is talking about blasting music. Someone is blasting their music. and to turn that around and actually enjoy it. And I wanted to share a story because it's a practical story. We live in Elmhurst, Queens, and there are three sisters living at the house. And usually now it's spring, and when it gets hot, people blast their music here a lot. And we have the next door neighbor, they usually have parties in their yard. And so they blast the music right into our bedrooms. And it's really loud, boom, boom, boom. You could hear it in your head. And so we have a sister here, she does not like noise. And when she hears the noise, and especially weekends when she wants to sleep, it really gets her upset because once she wakes up, she can't go back to sleep. So she becomes very, very irritable then that she couldn't sleep. So she said, look, I'm going to go report this to the police. So she went to the police station and she reported the noise that was taking place here. Could he come and talk to the neighbors? So the police came, and the police went, and it was actually these boys had a little band which they were practicing in the garage, in the neighbor's garage. And so the police then went and found out about the whole case. Why was the noise? Why they were doing this, etc. And so then he came back, knocked on our door and called her and took her over to the garage to see what was really happening. And then said to her that, do you see what's happening? They have nowhere else to go to play, to practice. They have no idea they're disturbing you. And if you stop them, what will happen? You know, could you have a neighborly gesture towards these young boys and just let them practice? In other words, he was calling on her compassion. And then she said to the boys, well, could you stop at such and such a time? And the boys said, yes, we could stop at such and such a time. Maybe they stopped the next two Saturdays, but then they went back playing however long they wanted to play. But the point is, he connected her to those boys in the neighborhood. So it was no longer the boys disturbing her with the music, but there were boys in the neighborhood doing something artistic, doing something to create something within them. And just like the person said in the chat, it turned around and became a means of enjoyment for her, because she wasn't just listening to the noise, but she was connecting to the souls of these boys and wanted to support them to really develop something that was potentially may, be their careers as they grew up. And I think that these are the things that change our thinking. We just can't change the thinking unless something shifts inside of us in relation to the other.
That's so true. It's
And I
beautiful.
thought the wisdom of the police was great,
Yes, totally.
It was totally great because she didn't make these boys her enemy. They actually became friends because when she would see them when she walks down the street, they would smile. So there was that for me was important. And that was the success of that little episode in which it turned her feelings around for those boys, and they appreciated, they felt listened to, they felt she valued a talent they had, and she wanted to support it. And the police was great in bringing the two parties together.
Yeah, and people are not used to being treated all the time with kindness. They always expect the adults to hate the loud music and blah. Whenever we can break that cycle or that predictable response, that knee-jerk response, the rewards, just being kind is its own reward, but it really is a reward for the other person also.
Yeah, and also being seen, that whole aspect of you could have heard it and not ever see who was doing it. So you can't stop thinking of others. You can't stop seeing of others, but you can do it differently.
Yes.
By something changing within your very awareness of why it's happening. And I think the seeing is also a very powerful thing. How am I seeing the other? Because seeing is a transformative act, actually. And within my seeing, I could change my whole inner world in relation to what is going on in the outer world and respond very differently to it.
So the vision comes first.
I think they all act together. Is like this: the heart beat first or the lung breathe first. So they all do it in rhythmic, there's a rhythm to it. And so I think it all works in a very beautiful, coordinated pattern.
The reason I said that was that I think a lot of people, when they're trying to change habitual patterns, they think, how do I do that? So I think what I'm hearing, if I'm hearing you correctly, is that before I do, I can change a thought. And if I have a different view, then I'm able to behave differently. And it's all a question of self-dialogue. And that has nothing to do with asking someone else what I should think.
Yeah, but also coming back to your point, before I even think, just be silent, just transcend, just be in awe of the moment. And being in awe of the moment is that I'm not even seeing it as good or bad. I'm just in awe that it happened. And I'm silent. And I'm looking to see what will emerge out of it. It's called transcendence in a certain way, but I call it also being in awe. And I always remember being in San Francisco and going to see those redwood trees. And I'm standing on the ground and I'm looking up and I can't see the end of the trees. They're so tall. And I was in awe. I didn't think anything. I was just in awe of the moment of what I was seeing. So, I think when that silent space emerges, it gives us a perspective that we wouldn't have internally understood before or externally see with our eyes. So we wouldn't have thought about it before, neither would we have seen it. So thinking and seeing are very connected.
Yeah.
And of course, feeling, the feelings also emerge, that triangle.
So this leads us now, I think, I'm thinking of how important the silence is. And of course, here we always think of meditation. But the most intriguing thing to me when I first studied what was going on at Peace Village with open eye meditation, with walking meditation, I think that's what you've been describing this evening. Ways, people get kind of scared and I can't do it well enough. And I have to levitate or sit in a quiet room and close my eyes. But I can say firsthand that I know a whole lot of people around here who know how to walk and talk and perform service, all not really necessarily being in the total mind, being here.
Mm-hmm.
They're in a higher place. And that's what I converted to with my nameless gentleman. I hope he comes back tomorrow so I can meet him over the fence,
Right.
And
you can make eye contact with him. You can see him. You heard him, but you haven't seen him.
that's
So
right.
now you see him.
But I've created a whole story. I mean, what do we do, right? He goes home and he can't stand his wife and he fights with her, but I know he has the joy on the job. So,
but you can also think that he has a wife who totally enjoys his singing, and he has children who are also beautiful at singing. So how do you choose to think about him?
I'm just happy he was happy. And I'm imagining, that's right. You caught me. I'm imagining that this is his private escape from whatever may be going on. We all have bumpy roads or two. And I did imagine that. So, well.
One thing, I know we're coming to an end, but I would say this thing about thinking and seeing in springtime is the best time to see and think beautiful thoughts, because it's the time of the flowers. It's the time of new life. It's the time of new leaves. And like today, I was walking down the street. I was going for a walk. And I am seeing the tulips, I'm seeing the daffodils, I'm seeing the hyacinths, I'm seeing the cherry blossoms and the apple blossoms, and they're early this year. So you're seeing them on the trees. And then I suddenly felt I was not seeing the flowers anymore because I was looking at everyone who wasn't wearing their masks properly. And I said, you know what? I'm coming for a walk. to be the policewoman of masks? Am I coming for a walk to enjoy the flowers, to know that spring is here and there's new life budding all around me? So I want to connect to the new life. I'm not a policewoman walking, criticizing people. So then this is what you're saying. As you're walking, as you're doing the natural things, stop. You know, it's that stop, look, listen, stop, look inside, listen to your thoughts, become aware of what you're seeing. That's all it takes. One moment, pause, stop, look, listen, enjoy that moment, because that moment has given you the opportunity to think, to feel, and to see. How do I want to spend that moment?
That's right. I love the green of spring. And today, the little budding leaves on a tree in my backyard were different from yesterday.
Mhm.
They
Yeah.
were a little bit bigger, and they were green, that beautiful green, untouched by chemicals and air, and so virginal green. And I'm glad you brought that up with the flowers. Yeah, we've had a good time with flowers. Well, you know what I'm going to ask you to do, if you would be so kind. We usually end with a meditation. Is there anyone else in chat that we haven't responded to? First of all, I don't want to be leaving anyone out. Okay, just very quickly. Maria says, I learn why. Oh, why not be instrumental in solving the problems of others instead of being a problem yourself? This is from Marie. Thank
Mhm.
you. That's wonderful. And one last one, relax, give yourself time, try again. New habits take time to take hold. It will happen. It will bring happiness.
I
Lovely.
like Marie's point, because I feel that it's true. If I have a problem, it may be too close to me to solve. But if you know, the idea of being in service to others, but and in doing so, if I could help solve the problem of another as best as I could, maybe that's the way to solve my own problem. And so it is a very lovely way to also go about. So this is why we say, you know, we live such an interconnected world, that everybody's problem is my problem, and my problem everybody else's problem. So if I can't solve it for myself, and I look at it as a detached observer, from a different perspective, someone else going through that similar problem to mine, then seeing it and being a little bit detached from it would then give me pointers of what to do for myself.
Beautiful. So when we talk about going into a moment of silence, a silent meditation, the interesting thing is with the Brahma Kumaris and at the end of our sessions, it's always guided. So I had to reinvent my definition of silence. It's silence from my mind that chatters. It's silent from all the thoughts that come in and out, like clouds come in and out of the sky view. And so if you would guide us in a meditative conclusion to this beautiful discussion, and we can try and stay focused only on your words, and silent that voice that sometimes doesn't stop chattering. Would you do that for us now?
Sure. And I know we have a short time, so I'll make it a short meditation. Is that about a 5 minutes,
Yeah,
Louise?
5 minutes, 4 or 5 minutes, fine.
Okay. So I'll invite everyone to sit comfortably and to relax the body and to focus. In focusing, let the attention concentrate on the center of the forehead. The life force, the soul, the living being, is seated in the center of the forehead. Looking at this living life of the soul, visualize it as a lotus. The lotus of many petals. Each petal is like a thought. And each thought is connected to the core of the lotus. The roots of the lotus are in the mud, but the petals are above. And the petals open up to the light of the divine, the light of God. When the petals representing my thoughts receive the light from above, they receive the strength to think with wisdom. Wisdom is simple. It is not complicated. When my thoughts,
We can hear this thing.
when my thoughts are connected to wisdom coming from the light of God, my thoughts uplift myself and uplift others. The spine of my thoughts are my feelings. There's always a feeling accompanying my thoughts. And when my thoughts are elevated and pure, they give strength to my feelings. And when my feelings are elevated and pure, they give strength to my thoughts. They work together. and wisdom holds them as companions for spiritual growth. When my thoughts and my feelings radiate through my eyes, it is as if I'm seeing into the being of others. Whatever are the qualities of my thoughts and my feelings, those same qualities I will see in others. I will see into their being with my being. Let me remain in the awareness that my mind is like a lotus full of petals, and each petal carries a thought and a feeling. And let my eyes show the meaning of my thoughts and my feelings. And let this meaning touch others and touch my world. Thank you, and Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Thank you for pinch hitting on last moment's notice, but thank you so much for your wisdom and your graciousness. So we wish you internet power and personal strength to everyone here. And now we've learned the difference between the two. The internet needs power, and we need personal strength.
I think the internet needs a rest. So let it rest as long as it wants.
Yeah. All right. Well, good luck with it. Okay. So I just want to tell everyone that the theme in April is living peacefully and happily with yourself. And next weekend, we'll be talking about how to discard self-criticism and take on self-value. So we wish you all a lot of peace and inner strength. And we hope to see you again next week. Om Shanti. And thank you, Brother Eric. Thank you, Sister Inez. And thank you, Sister Gayatri.
Om Shanti. Thank you for the wonderful moderation, Louise and Sister Gayatri. Truly appreciate you joining the Global Harmony House family on our Insight. And we're very, very happy that you have an extended power on your cell phone to stay with us. So everybody, power up and be peaceful. Thanks again to everybody for joining us. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti.